In Western capitalist society, a lot of our power and influence comes through the way that we spend our money. So I think this is kind of more apparent now than ever, really. How many businesses are struggling right now because we're not going out for dinner or going to the coffee shop or buying clothes or, getting a haircut. All these businesses are struggling because our behaviour has changed in the way that we use our money. So the way that we spend our money in the day-to-day, it does have a big impact on our communities and society as a whole. So we should be thinking about this as part of our stewardship. We've already talked a bit about showrooming, my particular bugbear. There's plenty of other things to consider, and I'm just going to list a few of those. So firstly, I would say vote with your money. Use your money to support the businesses you like, the ones you want to see thrive or even just survive. If you like the fact that there's a little parade of shops at the end of your street, then spend your money there. If you want to see your town do well, spend your money in your town, and that might mean even choosing a local business over a big chain or even an online shop. Okay, second one, don't believe the false economy. Or in other words, don't buy tat. Getting 5 things for £1 is often a worse investment than buying just one thing for £1. You might find that you've just bought 5 bits of tat that are going to break the first time you've used them. And so you've not only just wasted your money, but you've created more waste, and you've rewarded a company whose business model seems to be on disappointing their customers. On the other hand, don't believe the marketers. So there is a whole industry dedicated to getting you to buy stuff that you don't need for as much money as they think you need, that you're willing to spend. So remember, the cost of products isn't dictated by how much it costs to produce. It's dictated by how much they think consumers, that's you and me, are willing to pay for it. So if they can take a £5 product and charge you 10 because it's got their brand on it, they're going to do that. Now, so of course, those two last things are kind of in competition with each other. So the trick is working out whether you're paying a premium based on the product or the marketing. And that one is down to you to work out. So next point, don't do it all yourself. So if you've got a busy job, there's a good chance that you're like money rich, time poor. On the other hand, there are plenty of other people who are money poor and time rich. So, it makes sense to try and balance it out. And so I quite like doing DIY, and I'm slowly getting better at it. But I know there are a lot of jobs that will just take me a long, long time to do myself, or I'm just simply not skilled enough to do them in the first place. So why would I use all my time doing something that's going to bring me no joy just to save me a little bit of money? So don't be stingy. Pay that tradesperson to do it. Ask a friend for a recommendation. Don't be shocked if it's a little bit more expensive than you might have first thought. Remember, they've got their own overheads and running costs. They've got their rent to pay, their family to support, all those costs, and they rely on you for that. So if we're going to do that, you're going to get a good job done. You're going to get time back with your family or doing the things that you want to do, and you're going to support someone else with your money. And I think this is another one of those things that's particularly relevant at this present time. There's going to be a lot of people, a lot of tradespeople who will have been struggling for the last few weeks and months. And it might be an opportunity as things start to open up to be able to support them. Anyway, last point, think about the environmental impact of your spending. The stewardship is not only about the money that God has given to us, it's also about caring for our planet. This has been a big thing. It won't expect to escape your attention over the last few years that this has become a big thing, and perhaps it's becoming easier for us to be more considerate for the environment in the way we spend our money, whether that's through the way things are getting less packaging or lower food miles and all that sort of stuff. But one thing you might not have thought about is your electricity package. There's lots of suppliers these days who will offer a green package for your electricity, or even for your pension. If you've got a pension, and you might want to think about where that's invested. Many pension providers offer funds that only invest into ethical and environmentally friendly businesses. So that's another thing perhaps to consider. Okay, so we've looked at the money we choose to give away. We've looked at how we spend our money. But finally, we're going to talk about the money that's taken from us. So I'm talking about tax. So for some, this won't be an issue at all. If you're on, pay-as-you-earn, PAYE, your tax kind of comes out every month. You barely have to think about it, apart from maybe every now and again you look at your pay slip and you see one number compared to the other, and you're a little bit disappointed at how much has come out. But if other people, if they're self-employed, like me, then tax can be a bit of a thorny issue, really, as it was 2,000 years ago, even in Jesus' time. In Matthew 22, it tells the story of when the Pharisees tried to catch Jesus out by challenging him on his attitude towards tax. They asked him whether it was right to pay taxes to Caesar or not. And in verses 18 to 21, it says, "But Jesus was aware of their malice and said, 'Why put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin for the tax.' And they brought him a denarius. And Jesus said to them, 'Whose likeness and inscription is this?' And they said, 'Caesar's.' And he said to them, 'Therefore render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's.'" So I think what Jesus is saying here is we should give to earthly powers what is due, while of course remembering that as citizens of God's kingdom and stewards of his money, our overall attitude should be one of giving ourselves to his purposes. The trouble is, if you are self-employed and you have this issue of tax to think about, working out what is due isn't always a simple question. If you've got a half-decent accountant, they'll have already talked to you about tax efficiency, which is kind of another word basically for tax avoidance. It's a tricky one to think about and talk about. Where does financial prudency end and tax avoidance begin? And I think this is just an issue that you have to do prayerfully and in line with just what you feel is right. At the end of the day, you should be able to stand tall and not be embarrassed if your tax payments were to see the light of day. As Christians, we should have integrity with all of our financial dealings. We shouldn't hide behind little loopholes and clever little accounting to get around payments that are due to Caesar, or in this case, of course, the public purse. Remember, your money isn't. A common expression is to say, all my money going straight into Boris's pockets, or wherever it might be, the Chancellor's pockets. Of course, that isn't the case. Our tax is funding the NHS. It's paying our benefits. It's paying our teachers. It's building our infrastructure. It's all those things and more. In fact, according to the 2019-2020 budget, about 25% of public spending went on pensions and welfare. About 15% went on health, and about 8% went on education. So, of course, there are all sorts of other things that the government spends its money on, and you're not going to agree with them all. For instance, perhaps maybe like defence spending, which accounts for 3% of spending. So there are always going to be things that you think money could be spent better by the government. Of course there is. But I'm not going to say that is a reason to stop the way that you pay your tax, particularly not in this time of recession as we're going into. Very soon, welfare payments are going to be going up while overall income is going to be coming down. So I would say this isn't the time to be trying to getting into tax avoidance too strongly, unless you've got very strong convictions about the way that our public money is spent. So anyway, let's recap on what we've covered in the last couple of weeks. So, firstly, your money is not yours, it's God's. God has entrusted you as stewards of his money. So let's use that responsibility wisely. This means there's no pride or shame in how wealthy we are. God isn't interested in how much we have in the bank account. He's interested in what we're doing with it. So what should we be doing with it? First, and I mean first, we should be giving. Our giving should be the first thing we do with our money. This means giving to our local church as well as to other organisations. How much is for you to decide for God, but make that decision based on your level of faith, not on what you have left over at the end of the month. Second, we should be using our money shrewdly. So whether that's through blessing others and our community or caring for our planet, we should be thinking carefully about how we're using our money. And finally, I don't believe we should be holding our money from the government. We should be giving to Caesar what is due. Right, so that is the end of this mini-series on money. I hope you found it helpful. I've certainly found it useful just doing it for myself. I've even, in the course of doing this, even changed bank accounts to help me, to one that's going to help me budget, I think, a bit more. Before I finish though, I thought I would just give a couple of very quick book recommendations that I found helpful in reading previous to this and just in preparation for this. So first one, I guess this ties in a bit with what we talked about last week. Actually, and some of the points that we talked about this week I've taken pretty much directly from here actually. Those 5 Ps around giving, for instance, were taken from this. This is called Your Money and Your Life. It looks a bit like that. Look at that. I've not chosen any big thick ones. Very nice little practical book. Lots of sort of biblical references in there. Stuff about budgeting. All sorts of stuff there around how to use money well. Experience God's grace in your finances with this biblical approach to managing money. Is what it says on the back. That was one little helpful one. And the other one, I read this a few years ago actually and found it really helpful. A bit of a different take. It's called Consumer Detox. Less stuff, more life. The tagline on the back is your journey towards a richer, simpler, more generous life. I found this book another really helpful, just another really easy one to read. And again, another little one that I recommend. Anyway, next week, Alex will be back to continue his journey through Leviticus. So do tune in for that. And of course, don't forget to tune in on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. for our main service. But that's all. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.